Hey everyone, welcome to Momma from Scratch. My name is Emily and today we are working on a super fun project. It's going to be super challenging for me and I am so excited. We are going to be making a DIY faux fireplace surround mantle. Kind of a mouthful, but I want to create a beautiful like stone looking fireplace surround. It's something I've been wanting to add to our room for quite some time, and this fireplace behind me I absolutely love, but I want to kind of go a little bit more on the traditional side for the bedroom, and so we are going to be making this DIY faux mantle surround. I'm excited too because it's not going to be permanent. I can move it to different rooms if I want to, which is really fun because that means I can redecorate and change things up, which you guys know I love to do. So I hope you guys are excited for this. I am going to be sharing this as I go, so I'm sure I'm going to mess up a time or two on this, but I'm really excited if you can't tell. So let's go into the room, show you what I'm kind of thinking of, and let's get started. So this wall in the master bedroom is completely blank, and so I thought it'd be fun to add a faux fireplace here as a focal point. We also have hookups on the wall for a TV, but we don't plan on putting one up right now. Maybe in the future we will, but today, no. And then I could decorate it for the seasons and stuff. I mean, Christmas is coming up. I need an extra mantle to decorate, you know what I'm saying? So I thought it'd be a perfect use for this space. These plans, you can customize them for whatever size you want. You can make it wider, taller, you can put an electrical insert in it, or you can put a gas insert. It's completely up to you. My inspiration for these are coming from a few pictures that I found online when I was looking for actually stone surrounds for the fireplace, because I thought maybe they'd be a few $100s. Oh no, they're in the thousands, and I was kind of shocked. I didn't realize it'd be so much. Which, if you're doing it for like a main focal area, like let's say your living room or something, by all means go for it. But you know, for the bedroom, I ain't spending that much money, and I knew I could probably DIY it, and plus it'd be a challenge, and I'm always up for that. So I am gonna get started working on the DIY for the faux fireplace surround. I have some materials on hand like trim boards. I'm gonna be using a hardy backer, 2x4s, 1x2s, and then I'm going to use some liquid nails, some paintable silicone, and my nailer, and a couple screws, and that's probably all we're going to need. So, and of course we're going to need paint and primer, but besides that, we don't need too much for this, so it should keep the cost pretty low. I hope you're excited, so let's go ahead and get started building. I went to the hardware store and picked up a piece of wall paneling that is 4x8 in size, and I'm just making my measurements. Decided to go with 46.5 inches tall, and I'm going to go with 4 feet wide, so I don't have to cut the board that way, but I do need to make my mark. So I'm just going to use a piece of wood since I don't have a long enough straight edge for this, and then I'm just going to line it up with all my marks and then make a nice dark pencil mark. And then I'm going to be using my table saw for this. I needed some help because this board is so thin that it flexes a lot. It's not like a regular piece of plywood. I was going to use plywood, but plywood is still super expensive, so this worked just fine. So we went ahead and ripped this down. Now I'm going to make my cuts for the 3 side pieces. I'm basically making a N with this. And so these were each cut at 46.5, and then the top one was cut at 48. And I'm just using my chop saw for this and just doing a nice straight edge. And then I ended up, as I was doing this project, I don't have any plans for this or anything, so I was just kind of going visually as I was looking at it, how I needed to get this to work. And so I ran into a few hiccups, but that's part of DIY. And so once I got those cut, I ended up putting them all around, and I'm going to use 2.5 inch screws, and I'm just going to secure those together, 2 screws in each end of the boards. So for the fireplace surround, I wanted it to be about 12 inches wide in the front for each portion of it. You can customize this to whatever size you want, but I just took my chop saw and cut those. And then a trick I like to do is make sure everything's the same size. That way I don't do my pencil marks wrong, as I use the first board as a guide for all the rest of the boards. Now here I am working on the angled corner pieces, and this is where I messed up. You'll notice later on in the video I will show you how I corrected it, but for this you're going to want to just use a 2x4 as well, but you're actually going to cut it down at an angle. And the way you're going to do that is take it from the 3.5 inches that it actually measures down to the 1/2 inch that's down there. So visually this looked the way I wanted it to look, but it didn't operate properly when I went to go cut the other boards. So this is a step that you don't need to do. Well, you do need to do it, but you need to do it with the proper size board. Hopefully that makes sense. So now I am ripping down the other part of the wall paneling. I had this left over from my mudroom makeover. If you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. But now I'm taking this and I'm making sure that at an angle this lays somewhat flat and I have the proper width. But then I noticed that the top of my 2x4 actually needed to be angled. So I originally cut these at a 30-degree angle, which ended up being too steep. So I would suggest doing a 15-degree angle that has a nice slope to it. That way the board will sit flush on there and go down to the other board. Both of them technically should be angled, but I just didn't do that. But do you see how it's rounded on the top and then smooth near the bottom? I really like the fact that I was able to do this, challenging myself with this project. But as I was doing it, I was learning as I was going, because it was kind of like a puzzle piece. I'm putting it together slowly but surely. So hopefully this is helpful still to you. After I reattach the boards together, I'm using some liquid nails just on the top, and I'm actually going to put the wall paneling on that, and then I'm also going to liquid nail the inner boards on there as well. And I'm just using slightly bigger nails. I think they're like 1/2 inch nails, just so that it hits it and holds it onto the backing. That way I can flip the whole unit over and then actually nail it on, and it won't go anywhere. It's really important that when you go to make your front cuts, the wall paneling has two different sides, a rough side and a smooth side. I did cut one side wrong. So it's best if you lay them out, that way you turn it over opposite, so that way you get the right angles and the right finish on each side. So once I got the first two boards on there, I ended up just taking the scrap piece and putting that on there. And if you're doing a straight, straight corners, this works great. But I wanted mine to have that curve and kind of taper inward. I thought it just gives such a pretty look, like the stone ones do that I showed you earlier in the video for my inspiration. And so I just went ahead and marked my with my pencil and put the other side boards on top, so that way I could get a pretty accurate measurement here. And then I took them to the table saw and ripped them down at that angle, and I didn't quite get it close enough as I would like, but it's still as good as it's gonna get. I'm just learning as I go. But this is the part where, remember I told you I messed up in the beginning, so I ended up using a 2x3 because we got the other 1/2 inch from the one that I'm putting the liquid nails onto right now. And then I'm just liquid nailing those together, and then I'm nailing them from the back side, so that way they hold together. But do you see how it angles upwards, so we can have that nice tapered edge? So just in the beginning, do it the correct way. I'm learning as I go here, so just bear with me. Hopefully you're still enjoying this. The brown wall paneling boards that we cut earlier, we're going to attach those now. And I'm using some liquid nails, that way it just has some better adhesive to it. You don't need to. If you're using plywood for this that's thicker than this, you really don't need to use it. But since this board is only like a 1/4 inch thickness, I really wanted to make sure that I had it secured on there. And so now I'm just using 1/2 inch nails, and I'm gonna go down. And what I like to do is put one in the middle, and then that way I can adjust it on each end as I go. It's helpful when you're attaching pieces, because if you start just nailing it all the way in, you may not have the flush on each end. So see how that board that we put down, the right size, came in handy. So I'm going to repeat the same steps here on the opposite side and then the top side as well.
Nobody told me to settle down. Day nights and late nights don't kid around. But there's something about you I like, about you I like. You're crazy for saying I should slow down, but maybe I'm escaping the love we found. There's something about you I like, about you I like.
Board would look fine, but I think the chunkier board would look better. So these are primed MDF boards, and I'm going to make sure it's flush on here on the side, and then I'm going to mark it here, and then I'm going to put it all the way up here in the corner, and I'm going to do a 45-degree angle cut here, and then I will do the same thing on this top part, just like we did with these boards. Now, before I attach the MDF trim boards, I actually need to dress up the sides here. So I'm just adding some liquid nails. Again, I kind of went crazy with that stuff. It's not necessary for everything. But I went ahead and trimmed those out. That way I wouldn't have anything rough there, and then the sides would be really smooth. And then the trim boards will cover up where they actually attach. So the trim board will be flush with the side pieces. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Now, to get a better accurate measurement for my top piece, now that I have the side pieces on, I will go ahead and just put both the side angles on, just like we did for the hardy board, and I'm gonna mark that with my pencil and then cut that at a 45-degree angle. And then before we attach it, we're gonna make sure everything fits, dry fit it, everything as much as possible. And then I'm just adding some liquid nails again, and then I will add in 1 or 2 nails. That way I can move it around and make sure that the top 45-degree angles match up perfectly, so I don't have to do too much wood filler or anything. It's really taking shape, and I hope you guys can see how good it looks already. We have to add a little bit more. I ended up taking a little slivers and putting it on the inner part because I didn't like that I didn't have that completely flush there. That way it would be even. And then I'm actually going to be painting the bottom piece, and it's kind of rough, and I did that on purpose. That way the texture would kind of come out in the way I'm going to paint the inner portion of the fireplace. Then to make the mantle wider so I could put vases and things like that on it, I used a 1/2 inch by 7.5 inch board. I liquid nailed it, again, you don't have to. And then for the edges, I ended up cutting the edges, turning my saw sideways. So not turning it to 45 degrees, but actually tilting the saw blade at 45-degree angle and making my cuts. That way I could get a beautiful corner. And this would actually make the front of the mantle appear thicker as well, since I used a thinner board on this. And then I'm just liquid nailing it. That way it just sits nice and snug. And again, I'm just using 1/2 inch nails for this. And it went together really nicely. I'm super happy. If you don't have a nailer, you could just tape this on and the liquid nails will probably hold it just fine for you. Now we're moving on to some of the finishing touches for the faux fireplace surround. I'm using paintable caulking for this, and I'm gonna try to use this to fill in those wider gaps that I have here on my corners that I didn't quite get as snug as I would like. But then I'm also using it to trim out all of the areas that the boards meet. That way it looks flawless and there'll be no visible cracks showing, so it looks like one solid piece. Now to fill all the nail holes, I am just using some spackle. You can use wood filler as well. Both work just fine. You're going to overstuff the hole, and then you'll go back and sand it once it has dried, and it'll be nice and smooth and be a beautiful finish for you. Since the wall paneling is pretty dark, I'm going to be using my bin primer. I like this stuff, it works great. One coat is just fine. I do sand after it, that way it's nice and smooth. There's no like little lumps or anything that might have tacked on there while you were painting or while it was drying. Since I am outside, little bugs are flying around, you know how that works. Alright, paint sample time. We have London Fog, Classic Gray, Seattle Mist, and Northern Cliff. This one looks white to me, but it's not. I kind of am looking at these two. This one has more of a taupey color. This is more of a gray. I know it looks opposite in this light, and this one I think is just going to be too brown. So I think I'm going to go with this one. I held it up in the room and I think it looks fairly good, and then I dripped it all over the floor, so I had to clean it up, but yeah. Look how good that color looks. Let's just hope it looks spectacular in the room. I absolutely love the way it looks. At first I couldn't really tell the difference, but you can definitely see that it's nice, it's light, but still offers some interest, and it's pretty close to like a faux stone look, depending on what type of stone you get, and that's kind of what I wanted. I did notice that Lowe's does carry like a plaster type of paint, but it's around $60 a gallon, and I used like 1/4 of the sample can for this, so I didn't really want to spend the money on that, but you totally could if you're doing a much bigger project. I think it'd be well worth it. So I tried going to Lowe's and Home Depot. I couldn't find any tiles that were the right size, the right color. So I decided I am just going to make my own stencil. And so I went into Cricut Design Space, went through the images, couldn't find anything exactly the way I wanted. So I made my own herringbone pattern, basically went into the shapes, and then I made my own rectangles, 2 inch by 5 inch, and then I'm layering them, and then I made sure to attach that, and then that way I could just have it cut out on cardstock, and I could make my own stencil / template, and I could just repeat the pattern. You could do this with vinyl as well if you wanted to. guys saw, I took my Cricut and I made my own stencil. I thought I had stencil material, but I did not, so I just used some really thick cardstock for this, which I think will work perfectly for this project. And then I mixed together two paints, Waverly Elephant color, I believe, and then a little bit of black mixed in, and so you get kind of this mixture of a color. It's exactly what I want it to be. I don't want a pure color because I want it to look like a real like faux brick type of thing. So now I just got to figure out my design for this thing. If I want it to go upward, if I want it to go down. Usually with a stencil you do it with a dryer, you do it with a sponge brush, but for this I'm just gonna hold it and I'm just gonna kind of pat that on there a little bit and just kind of do it that way. You should actually tape this down, but I don't know, I guess I just don't feel like doing that. So. A little bleed through here, not a big deal. I can fix that with the paint. This is one of the reasons why I did the wall paneling backwards, because it has texture on the one side and that would give me a more realistic look for the brick that I was planning on painting on here, and it definitely helps so much. So think about that when you have projects. Texture makes a huge difference. Something I did do is here on the bottom, since I have my baseboards down here, I made sure that I put a back support on this that was 1/2 inch, just like the baseboard, so it would sit flush to the wall, and that way I wouldn't have to take out my baseboards. I wanted to show you how different this looks. I'm very happy with the way it looks. I'm very happy with the curvature of it and everything, but the brick I like, but I don't know if I like the color that I did it in. When I was sitting there doing it, it looked one way, but now seeing it against the wall, it's completely different. So I want to show you something. If I kept the inner part white, look how different that looks against the wall. I like it a lot. But most inside fireplaces are not white. They usually have a brick or they're black or something. So I'm thinking I need to darken the brick up a bit, but look how different it looks with black next to it. See? It looks completely different on the wall, and it has more of that look that I'm going for, a little bit more of that traditional modern look. So I think the brick is gonna have to go darker, or maybe we'll just do a whole black in there. I don't know. This picture, now it looks small, but I think it could be really pretty. So let's just look at that for a second. I love horses. Let's try maybe some candles goes with it. Bring in that black. I definitely, after seeing it with the picture, I definitely need to add some black to it. I think a black face would be really pretty, but I'm using all mine in the living space, so yeah. What do we think? Yeah? So I sent my mom a picture of it and she's like, Emily, you need a bottom to the fireplace. And so I went out to the garage, found a scrap piece of board. It was already 4 feet wide. And so I just painted it and put some felt pads on the bottom, nailed it to the bottom of the 2x4s and put it sideways. And it's done. I can now move it without scraping the floor or anything. I can take it wherever I want to. I'm so pleased with how awesome this project came together. I'm so glad I challenged myself, and I hope that you guys learned something and want to give this a try. I will have a blog post up soon for it, so definitely be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends. I am very happy with the way it turned out, and it was a fraction of the cost of getting a real stone one, and plus it was just a fun DIY to do. So I hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you so much for being here. Check the description box for more videos, and until next time, have a beautiful, blessed day. I'll see you soon.